The choice of where to start on this issue, we could go Voltaire, that would be a little obvious. If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. George Orwell, there's another one. This was, of course, Amber Rudd, former Conservative Home Secretary, hit out at rude students at Oxford University who cancelled her appearance at International Women's Day 30 minutes before it was due to begin. I thought when I first saw this story, she was probably part of a panel. There was a whole bunch of them there, and they decided that the one on the end, the former Home Sec, she's surplus to requirements. Her views are nefarious to our delicate palates, so she must go. In fact, the whole event was called In Conversation with Amber Rudd. So kind of her not being there sort of, in many ways, didn't just completely dilute the event, it obliterated the whole thing. She had to go. They didn't want to hear her, and their reasons were they had disagreements about her views or her position when she was in office on Windrush. I thought the best comment I read on Twitter, I know it's not the Oracle of Delphi, but it's sometimes a reasonable litmus test of logic every now and again. Mary H. said, "I'm baffled by the Oxford student decision to no platform under Amber Rudd. It's impossible to get more blandly centrist than Amber Rudd. It's like accusing the speaking clock of harbouring right-wing tendencies." What is going on when it comes to the no platform thing? We've seen all manner of people. I mean, for goodness sake, when Germaine Greer, who is arguably about as famous a feminist as one could get, globally speaking, is no platform because she's not quite feminist enough, or Linda Bellos is no platform because she's not quite left-wing enough, you know something has gone horribly wrong. Let's speak with Toby Young, founder and director at the Free Speech Union. Toby, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
You've walked the academic corridors of Oxford. What's going on over there?
Well, let me just correct one thing. She wasn't no platformed by the Oxford Union. I actually spoke in the Oxford Union on the same side as Anne Widdecombe in the debate that you opened with a clip from. And we won that debate absolutely resoundingly by a margin of about 10-1 in favour of free speech. And the Oxford Union, I think, has been very robust about upholding free speech. So they're not the guilty party here. No, the group that cancelled Amber Rudd were the UN Women Oxford UK Student Society.
Oh, them.
And they're organising a series of events in the run-up to International Women's Day on Sunday. And this particular event was due to take place at Christ Church, which is one of the grandest Oxford colleges. Sure. It was due to take place yesterday at 7:30, and at 6:30, this group put an announcement on its Facebook page announcing that the event was cancelled, apologising to women and non-binary students for having arranged to put it on in the first place. And Amber Rudd herself on Twitter this morning said that she'd actually travelled to Oxford at her own expense to speak to young women at this event as a celebration of International Women's Day and to talk about her work with the UN trying to eliminate female genital mutilation around the world. She travelled at her own expense, got there, had prepared, and was told with 30 minutes to go that she'd been cancelled. I mean, the rudeness, the lack of civility is really shocking.
Well, that you're right, Toby. That of course is just shocking and very rude. The deeper principle of what was going on here, however, I mean, one could say, in one respect, it's just bonkers. In another, it's kind of deeply sinister because there seems to be a bit of a pattern here. And I appreciate it's a minority of students, and as you rightly said, the debate you did with Anne Widdecombe, that point won over and tends to. But there is still, it seems, a very loud voice in the no platforming department who do seem to kind of get their way. And we're all forced to scratch our head and sort of wonder, how did we get here? How did we arrive in a place where people who one assumes enjoy debate and all that goes with it seem to pick, choose and select only the aspects of a debate or the people that concur 100% with their existing views? I mean, that's no debate at all.
No, I mean, it is a terrible state of affairs that we've reached. And bear in mind that this is the second no platforming episode at Oxford University in 5 days. So on Saturday, Selina Todd, who was due to speak at another conference as part of the International Women's Day celebrations, this time at Exeter College. And this was an event that she herself had helped organise, because Selina Todd is the Oxford Professor of Modern History. And she's a long-standing member of the left. She's a feminist historian. She's a frequent contributor to The Guardian. I mean, as you said, it isn't just conservatives who are cancelled now by these censorious mobs. It's also people on the left who they judge as being insufficiently progressive. And that was the case for Oxford's Professor of Modern History, who she got slightly more notice than Amber Rudd. I think she was told at something like 7 p.m. the night before that her invitation had been rescinded. And on that occasion, it was at the behest of trans activists who felt that because Selina Todd in the past has challenged some of their orthodoxies, that to allow her to speak would be tantamount to a form of harassment or discrimination against trans students. And I think a similar sort of argument, that's the kind of argument you hear when students rationalise this kind of McCarthyite behaviour. A similar argument, I think, was made in Amber Rudd's case. So according to the president of this particular society, the group that really agitated to have Amber Rudd no platformed was the Oxford African and Caribbean Society, and the reason they didn't want her to speak is because of they thought that she mishandled the Windrush scandal and was partly responsible for the deportation of some African Caribbean Britons. And they thought that just because of that, she shouldn't be given a platform, which is conferring a kind of legitimacy on her by this society. So
one would assume that would have been a perfect time to ask her about that, and maybe have debated that point. I think I'm right in saying that the chronology doesn't bear out their accusation anyway in terms of her time in office.
No, but yeah, I mean, and I'm sure, Amber Rudd has said subsequently she would have been perfectly prepared to talk about the Windrush scandal and deal with any challenges about her handling of that particular matter. And it's just extraordinary that rather than take the opportunity to, talk to a former Home Secretary, a senior politician, a senior female politician who's got a lot of experience of what it's like being a woman at the very highest level in politics, instead of taking that opportunity and airing whatever grievances they had in a public forum and engaging in, a vigorous debate, they would prefer it for her just to be no cancelled. And the extraordinary thing is that the society went along with this decision and pulled the plug. The real people at fault here, I think, are not, the African and Caribbean Society, not this particular society, which behaved pretty poorly, but the university authorities. I mean, they had these, grand statements about how passionately they're in favour of free speech plastered all over the college and university websites. There's a law, the 1986 Education Act, Section 43, imposes a legal duty on universities to uphold free speech, and that includes not inviting people and then disinviting them at the behest of a student mob just because they disagree with their political point of view. But none of these things are ever enforced. That's the problem.
Well, I was going to just mention that point, Toby. Isn't there anybody? We know that the new government, have said made some vocal statements about universities should be checking themselves on this kind of thing, but of course they can only do so much. You'd think somebody somewhere would drag the UN Women Oxford group to one side and say, I'm sorry, you can't do that. If you do that again, we won't even recognise you in any aspect of this debate. And there would be a more robust and defined response to this kind of thing. I mean, it just goes against academic debate, intellectual debate, culture. It goes against everything, surely.
Yeah, and I think the only way to change this culture is to hold the feet of those who are responsible for enforcing that these codes of practice are upheld, hold their feet to the fire. And that's something that the Free Speech Union is intending to do. I lodged a formal complaint with the rector, the head of Exeter College, on Sunday about the no platforming of Selina Todd And he has got back to me and said that will be investigated under the college's complaint procedure. I've just written a formal complaint to the proctor's office, who are responsible for making sure free speech is upheld at Oxford University, about the no platforming of Amber Rudd. I'm also writing a letter of complaint to the Dean of Christ Church. And I'm also writing a letter of complaint to something called the Censor's Office, which, in spite of their name, I think they are actually responsible for upholding free speech, not shutting it down.
You could have straight out of Private Eye, that, isn't it? I love it. Toby, always good to talk. Thank you. Toby Young, founder and director at the Free Speech Union, writing to the Censor's Office, among other things. Love that. What I would love to know, because I would easily fill a switchboard here with people saying, yes, clearly it is bonkers, it's demonstrable nonsense that you have, of all places as well. Red Brick University, some of our best and most recognised places of academic excellence, globally recognized. People travel across the planet to go to some of these universities. And here you have, it appears, almost a, I don't know, I will use the word, is there a fashion? Is it a vogue? Is there some kind of sense that this is now what you do in certain circumstances? If you don't like the speaker, or there's something about the speaker that you believe is controversial, or there's some aspects of their past, recent or distant, then you can sort of bolt that onto your angst and use that as a reason to not debate with them. I mean, that is... You would imagine, bearing in mind anyone at this university, you'd like to think has got their head screwed on to a certain extent. And I was trying to think of what the word is without just being overtly and obviously offensive. But the word is actually, there is no other word than stupid. It is just stupid. The pure dictionary sense of the word. The response when you are empty platforming people in this manner is just plain and simple stupidity. There's no other way, really, you can dress that up. We can get angry and start getting all sweary about the matter. And I understand that, because it is infuriating when people go almost North Korean bound with, I don't agree with that person's view, so they should not be debating here. And of all the places you would imagine that wouldn't have that view, it would be centres of academic excellence like Oxford, where those that go would be fully au fait with the basic and the fundamental rules of debate and discussion, and that is that it's all about meeting people with disagreeable views. I mean, you couldn't find a more totemic location, if you like, for debate and disagreement than the Oxford Union. That's almost the whole point of it. Some of our greatest leaders, globally as well as domestically, have come out of Oxbridge and have, along the way, through the conduit of a great education, further education, have debated and argued and had all manner of good, healthy, intelligent rows. That's how you get to conclusions, isn't it? So when you consider all of that and you put it all together and you look at these sort of slightly crazed ideologies, and these are the extremists, by the way. If you're banning Amber Rudd, as somebody said, about as blandly centrist as it gets, then you really know you're in trouble. When you're banning Jermaine Greer or Linda Bellos or Selena Todd and any of these kind of people, we're really in trouble somewhere along the line.